Hello, my name is James E. Cooligan, and I'm a psychologist with the feeding team at the IWK Health Centre in Halifax, Nova Scotia. This 15-minute presentation will review some strategies to help make mealtimes with children more successful. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge that the IWK is located in Mi'kmaq, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. We honor the knowledge, wisdom, and strengths of Indigenous people, and we recognize the historic and present-day harm and trauma experienced by Indigenous people. As a health authority serving diverse women, children, youth, and families, we commit to working together with Indigenous communities and leaders to co-create a path forward that focuses on reflection, understanding, awareness, reconciliation, and action. So the purpose of the presentation is to talk about, first of all, what do mealtimes look like for young children, some common reasons for feeding issues. We're going to cover the division of responsibilities. So what's your job, what's your child's job, and also kind of when to be concerned. So first we want to think about what mealtimes often look like for young children. Children tend to be curious. So they may ask questions about food or explore food by touching or smelling it. Children want independence, for example, only drinking milk that they poured into a cup. Some children have food jags where the child wants to eat the same food over and over. For example, some children want to eat a peanut butter sandwich every day for lunch for months. Lots of children exert their independence by saying no, and this can happen often at mealtimes. For example, saying no to eating a meal they happily ate last week. Children tend to respond to their body cues and will only eat when they are hungry. I'll talk about this more later on. Today I'm going to talk about some strategies that can be helpful when parents aren't happy with the variety of food their child eats or when mealtimes are stressful. First, I'm going to briefly talk about some factors that can contribute to feeding issues. First of all, there are some medical factors such as reflux, constipation, and dental issues that may need to be treated first before feeding improves. Development should also be considered, as delays in gross motor, fine motor, and oral motor skills can affect feeding. Behavior can also play a role, as children learn different behaviors at mealtimes. Finally, food neophobia, which is the fear of new or unknown food and peaks around 2 to 7 years of age, can also be a factor to consider. When there is a feeding challenge, typically that leads to an increase in caregiver worry. Caregivers then may engage in counterproductive feeding practices, which leads to resistance from the child, which leads to more pressure from caregivers, which increases feeding challenges. This worry cycle was described nicely by Rowell and McLaughlin. The main goal for all families is to decrease or eliminate power struggles over food. Stress at meals can decrease appetite and ability to learn. Research has shown an increase in pickiness and a decrease in weight with higher levels of pressure to eat. I want you to think about what you believe your responsibilities are at mealtimes. Lots of parents believe that it's their responsibility to get their child to eat, and this isn't the case. It's the parents' or caregiver's job to decide when, where, and what food will be offered. It's the child's job to decide how much and whether to eat the food provided. When thinking about when to offer food, routines are important. Ideally, there is a minimum of 2 to 3 hours in between meals and snacks, and the kitchen is closed in between. So there is no food or drink besides water in between those times. This gives the child a chance to become hungry and makes it more likely that they will eat the food offered at meal or snack time. Grazing on food or drinks throughout the day takes the edge off of hunger and can increase the likelihood of dental caries. It's also important to keep meal times to a reasonable length, ideally a maximum of 20 to 30 minutes. Ideally, children will be sitting with family members for meals whenever possible. Meal times are a wonderful social time to build good relationships, and it also allows children to learn from watching family members eat. Running or walking while eating is a choking hazard, so it is much safer for children to be sitting while eating. Ideally, mealtimes are free from distractions such as screens, as it will allow the child to focus on eating and be an active participant in the meal. Try offering healthy, balanced meals and snacks. Keep in mind that a snack is a small meal and does not need to be a food that has been marketed specifically as a snack food. You can always include one child-sized serving of dessert if that's something your family typically has. Be aware of the amount of fluid your child is drinking. Ideally, a maximum of 4 to 6 ounces of juice per day and around 16 ounces of milk per day for children 2 years and older. It's also important to make sure that the texture of the food is appropriate for your child's skill level so that they are able to efficiently eat the food offered. For example, if your child has difficulty eating pieces of meat, then you can make it easier for your child by offering ground, minced, flaked, or thinly sliced meat. It's your child's job to decide how much and whether to eat. This can be very hard for parents, but we want you to trust that your child will learn to be a competent eater. It's important to keep in mind that children's appetite varies. Some children eat one larger meal a day and eat small amounts at the other meals. Children go through growth spurts when they eat more food and periods of time when they eat less food. As long as your child has been growing well over time, their body has been doing a good job of knowing how many calories they need to grow. We want children to continue to respond to their body cues because many people run into challenges as adults when they don't listen to their fullness cues. It's also important to remember that children's food preferences will vary. Try not to label your child as a picky eater or have them overhear you saying that they're a picky eater or, no, they would never eat that, because hearing that they are picky reinforces the idea that they only eat very specific foods. When you trust that your child will learn to be a competent eater, you don't coax, encourage, or negotiate with them to eat more. Your job ends when the food is on the table, and it's your child's job to decide how much and whether to eat. Coaxing, encouraging, and negotiating at the table puts pressure on the child. Pressure increases stress, which decreases appetite. It also is a lot of attention for not eating. Every time you're coaxing, encouraging, or negotiating with your child to eat more, you're essentially giving them a high five for not eating, because your attention is extremely valuable and rewarding. Instead of coaxing, encouraging, and negotiating, I'd like you to focus your beam of attention on the behavior you want to see more of at mealtimes, such as sitting at the table, being polite, or trying a food, or accepting having a non-preferred food on their plate. Now, I'd like to review two options. One is to offer food in what's called by some people family style, by placing food in serving dishes on the table for everyone to serve themselves. You include a bowl or plate of one of your child's preferred foods that anyone can take food from. This may mean that there's a plate of crackers or a bowl of applesauce on the table. Serving food family style helps to remove the idea of my food being separated from everyone else's food. And it reduces or eliminates pressure, as anyone can serve themselves from any of the dishes. Another option is to pre-plate the food in the kitchen. The key things to remember when pre-plating the food is to offer small portions so that your child is not overwhelmed. You can place a small pea-sized piece of one non-preferred food on their plate alongside their preferred food if they will tolerate it. Some children may feel some pressure with the pre-plated option, so it's important to consider what will work best for your child and family. With both options, it's the child's responsibility to decide which food they want to eat and how much. Both options offer the opportunity for exposure to the sight and smell of different foods. It takes time to consider which option you think will work best for your family. Remember to approach change slowly and to make changes in very slow steps. Parents often have big goals like having their child eat vegetables, but we need to start with small steps. This could mean starting by teaching your child to sit at the table for meals, or working towards a small piece of carrot instead of a quarter cup of carrots, or introducing a new brand of vanilla yogurt instead of introducing mashed potatoes. You will need to follow your child's cues and go at their pace. Big changes usually fail, and it is better to reach your goal slowly than not at all. Keep in mind that change happens slowly. It can take 10 to 15 times of trying a food before they learn if they like it, and most parents stop offering after the third attempt. When your child tries a food, praise them for being brave and trying the food instead of asking them if they like the food. Remember that consistency is key. So if there are multiple caregivers, then you want everyone to be on the same page. It will make it easier for the child to learn if everyone is following the same rules. Finally, remember what your job as a parent is and trust that your child will learn to do their job. The last thing I want to mention is when to speak to your doctor about your concerns. It's particularly important to speak with your doctor or nurse practitioner if you believe that your child's weight or growth is compromised, or if you think that they have a nutrient deficiency such as anemia. Other reasons would be if your child has excluded an entire food group or has a very limited variety within a food group over time, if they drink all their calories, or if you really dread meal times. Thank you very much.